I want to start off by asking you a question, if that would be okay, Greg.
That was
All right. So I'm a retirement life coach, and of course, we'll be getting into that. I focus on the non-financial aspects of well-being in retirement. But what I want to ask you is, how do you define retirement, and how have you seen that play out in others as you've seen them in retirement?
how do I define retirement? I feel like I've gone through different definitions of retirement my whole entire life. Like at first, it was like work until you can not work anymore. But how I would define it now is kind of similar, but um, kind of working towards a goal of enjoying life, living the life you want to live. What doesn't matter the age, but being able to do the things you want to do and love to do, and kind of just enjoy life. If
Yeah.
somebody's 30 and they're retired, it doesn't have to be financially retired. They could be traveling the world and be retired from a career or a job type thing. So that's how I would define retirement now.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Of
When you
course.
said it, it seemed like you got some energy around it.
Yeah, of
And
course. Of course.
yeah.
Welcome back to Simply Satisfied. Today I'm joined by Wendy Legett. She's a professional certified coach. She specializes in retirement life planning. She's also the founder of Conflux Retirement Coaching, where she helps individuals navigate the non-financial, that's super important, non-financial side of retirement, the strengthening the identity, the purpose, the connection, the mindset, all for living what we like to talk about in this show, a fulfilling next chapter. She brings advanced certifications in positive intelligence, modern retirement, and transitions. And like a lot of my guests, she is a co-author of a book called The Retirement Collective. And she has her own workbook, which we will talk about later. But everybody, welcome Wendy Legett to the show. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. Now, I'm going to kind of flip the script on you. Is how would you define retirement?
Well, personally, I think the word retirement needs to be retired because I don't, that really fits in our vocabulary any
Yeah,
longer. It was really something that came on the scene more when people were working in the fields and the factories and they were tired. And so they reached a certain age and they just couldn't keep doing it any longer. The government stepped in with Social Security and helped them bridge that gap. And generally, people would expire after a couple of years. They didn't last too much longer. But we've held on to that concept and we've kind of elevated it. So it's almost like this trophy for people, that they start to feel like, wow, I'm retired. And especially like you were mentioning at a younger age, there's that movement called FIRE, financially independent, retire early.
yeah,
And so it's sort of like something that people aspire to, but then it's like, but now what's next? And so for so many people, and those are the people that I really am able to help, you're in this now. One in three struggling. And I think that's a pretty shocking statistic. Because if you think about when you ask people, how's retirement, they're going to say, you're already right. Great. And if you're the well and struggling, they will be crazy. You don't have to work, how lucky can you be? But the reality is the never struggle. And so when we talk about how do I define retirement, I define it as what's your next chapter, whether or not you're in career or you're not. But to your point, living that best life, stepping into the things that you feel passionate about. And so I don't advocate that people should retire, but I do advocate that if they choose to retire, retire well. And the way we do that is to go into it, being mindful, having strength around connection, purpose, etc.
yeah.
So that was a very long answer
No, it's
to your
good.
question.
It's good. So you're saying that some of the biggest struggles with retirement are that people kind of hit that stage and they're just like, I've done X for so long and I don't know what Y looks like.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Or I've done X for so long that I don't know how to translate that then into my next chapter. And so I'm going to follow what society has told me, which is it's endless weekends, leisure travel, or on the other end of the spectrum, aging and loss and one foot into the grave.
Yeah.
And so help people kind of bring it to the middle, that realistic optimism. being planful, being aware that it's not just a do-it-yourself project, that things will just happen, because we know if we don't design things, life will design it for us. And so it is then being that CEO of you, stepping into taking charge about your decisions and your choices and moving forward with them.
Yeah. How do you help people break past some of those misconceptions about retirement?
Well, I think it starts with that question, how do you define retirement? Because I think that when we start to get real about, no, I don't know. I think oftentimes people just figure one day you're in, the next day you're out. You're working and now you're retired. And they get onto that to-do list and the bucket list. And then they start to see, wow, is this all there is for me? Or a number of my clients who start to feel like they're busier than they ever were when they were working. And so they're like on this other hamster wheel. And they're not kind of taking charge rather than taking charge. So I think that that's what we start off with. That is really, what's your perception about retirement? Is it going to serve you? Or are you in that boat where you're feeling lost or confused? Or like one of my clients, felt like he was wandering in the desert. And so we really do want to start with clarity about what we're bringing with us in retirement, and also just equally important what we want to leave behind, the patterns and habits that serve us. And what we're bringing with us are all these strengths and capabilities and passions. We're not starting over. It's not a whole new book in our life. It's a new chapter. So springboarding off of those strengths as well.
Yeah. Now, I know you talked about the FIRE kind of culture that, financially independent, retire early culture. Now, this is a question that I've been asking, a lot of people myself, but when is like
Yeah.
especially since my parents are getting to the appropriate age, but when is the appropriate age to retire?
Yeah, I think that word appropriate, and I know you're just that, but it really, I would hope it would be an individual decision.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, like I had one client come to me, wanted to start mapping out her retirement. She was about a year and a half away from what she had planned. And as we started to work together, it became very clear that she wasn't ready to retire. She was getting so much pressure from her family because everyone had retired early in her family, but she was very gratified by the work she was doing. They loved her. She was really acknowledged a lot. She felt like she was accomplishing things. She liked the financial remuneration. She felt like she had good balance in life because she wanted to spend so much time with those family members. I don't know. But the thing is, so was it appropriate for her to retire then? Well, others thought it wasn't for her. So I really do think it's something where you need to dig deep. There are some industries where you have to retire at a certain age. I was on a flight recently. It was super cool, Greg, that they were celebrating the pilot's retirement. So it was his last flight and
Wow.
his family was on there and everything. And I happened to be sitting next to his son. So that's why I got the bird's eye view on it. And he shared that, at least in that industry, if I understood correctly, you have to retire at a certain age. Pilots have to retire at a certain age. So yeah, there are certain uh, jobs and certain careers and businesses where we have to retire. But if we don't have to retire, then it becomes really an important thing to step into that CEO of you and decide, well, what do I want beyond career? What is in store for me next? Am I losing balance in life by holding on to this career? Some people go past that should and they really should retire. Well, should is an external word, but for their own health or their own balance in life, it would be important for them to retire, but they don't have a clear view of what that could look like. So they hold on to the work and then they stay on that things.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yep. So it's really an individual thing. And so, like when you look to your parents, that first question is, how do you define retirement and what do you see for yourself in this next chapter? Because then we can start to see what, again, they bring with us, with them, and also potentially what they might want to leave behind.
Yeah. Now you mentioned becoming the CEO of you. Can you elaborate more on that? Like what that actually means?
Yeah. Well, when we think about career, we think about, that the purpose is built into it. The achievements are built into it. A lot of the decision making may, depending on your position, may or may not be built into it. And so then you're stepping through, you're taking steps to achieve certain outcomes. Well, being the CEO of you is then you taking that leadership role for your life in a much broader way. Because we might have had to abdicate some of that decision making because we're in career. But when we're in retirement, those decisions, all the buck stops here. They're all on our desk to decide. If we don't, let's say it's how we're spending our time or how we're feeling about things or where we're putting our energies or what our thoughts are. All of those things are within our control. Um, and if they're not, if there's things that we have to do, we still are choosing to have those have tos. And so that's what I mean by being a CEO of you is I think so often people do follow a script that life has given them or limiting beliefs that are ingrained in them. And they don't stop and reflect and say, hey, is this really serving me? Is this really the path that I want to go on? Be the CEO of you, make those conscious decisions. That way we're accountable. That way we have ownership and agency. And that way we move into our lives in a much more engaged and motivated way.
Yeah. So you're changing people's thinking about how they view not only retirement, but kind of their daily livelihood, the things they're going to be doing, right?
Yes, yeah, we really dig into things like what are your values? What are important to you? And then how do those values tie into the things that you're doing? And is the doing related to your being? Is it at that deeper level, really feeling fulfilling about you?
Yeah.
That informs around purpose. Because purpose comes up a lot, right? Especially when it comes to retirement, but really throughout all our life stages is feeling purposeful. And so that's an area we dig into too, because I think that can become very overwhelming or elusive for people is that they're supposed to find purpose. So it's like this holy grail and it can just be like a showstopper. So instead, we really want to shift that perspective into feeling purposeful. It could be purpose with a capital P. It can be purpose with small p's. It can be feeling purposeful by helping your neighbor. It can feel purposeful by reading a book that expands your thinking, volunteering, starting a new business, any number of things. So it can be large, it can be small, but feeling purposeful we want to move that purpose into a verb and get action oriented and motivated.
Okay.
So I kind of think I took us off track a little
No,
bit
that's
there.
great. That's great. Because the next thing I was going to ask is like, how do you help people kind of find the purpose when they've lost their career purpose? You know?
Yeah, yeah. So it's such an exciting exploration, really, because we roll things back. I have a number of exercises. We roll things back and look at, when you were younger, what lit you up?
Yeah.
If it didn't matter, what would you be doing? If nobody was watching, what would you risk? A lot of different questions like that, so that we kind of start to excavate the things that got buried over time because we are so busy or because there were some things that we didn't have agency over, etc. And now we have that opportunity to exercise that, but we need to step into it.
Yeah. Do you work with a lot of people who lose like a sense of identity when they stop working?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a saying, if you are what you do, who are you when you don't? And that really brings truth for a lot of people because our work becomes so intertwined with our lives. I know most people try to have that work-life balance, but there's just a lot of things that are difficult. And so we try to integrate then our work in our life. But again, that identity is fed from our work. Purpose is built in and baked into our work. And when we leave all of that, we can leave a lot of those feelings of purposefulness. Like,
Yeah. So like, that's a big shift for people to go through that.
it's a big shift because if you think about your life, for how many years you've worked, there are these patterns and habits, of course. That makes good sense. But it also becomes kind of autopilot, or it can also become limiting beliefs. And so if we don't stop and take stock in who we are, what we want, where we're at, where we want to go, who we want to become, then we can really lose out. And there is this time abundance that's also baked into retirement. It just feels like we're going to have all of these years and years ahead of us. And so oftentimes it can kind of get frittered away. People can say, oh, I'll do this next week, or they put it off,
Yeah.
or they, again, so busy. I've had clients that have come to me so busy. And when we really stop and look at, what constitutes that full calendar, oftentimes there are things on there that they didn't take agency. They just allowed things to start to absorb all this time because there was so much of it. So now they're committed to taking care of grandkids, or volunteering, or doing things with people that really are drains rather than gains of energy, any number of things. And so, again, if we don't take agency and be intentional and aware of the decisions we make, then that time can really, not be treated as precious, and not be as fulfilling as it could.
Yeah. And do you work with people of all age groups, or is it mostly people that are getting towards that quote unquote appropriate age of retirement?
Well, yeah, as a retirement life coach, then most of my clients are in that age where they're looking maybe 1 to 3 years out of retiring. I have a number of clients who have already retired, and they're seeing that, wow, it's not what it wasn't cracked up to be, where they start feeling like kind of remorse about leaving their work.
Yeah.
And so then able to dig in and say, is that really what it is? Or is it a matter of not having that vision for ourselves? But I do have clients that I work with because I focus on transition. So I have a number that are in career, and I support them as they transition from career to career, or, that upward mobility in their careers and things. But my main focus and my passion is around retirement life planning, because I think that's just a very overlooked area. There's so much focus on having your financial house in order,
Yeah.
and that's critically important, but there's more to the portfolio than just the finances. We get our whole selves, and we bring our whole selves into retirement, and not just our bank.
Yeah. So the whole self beyond the financials, what
Yes.
that what does that entail? Like what parts of the whole self? I mean, the whole self is all critical, but what is the criticalness of having the whole self being brought into retirement to have a successful retirement?
Yeah, such a great and fair question. So we touched upon identity. So that's an essential or foundational piece, because if we start to flounder and not really don't key in on who we are and the value that we bring, then we can feel like we're lost in the desert, like my clients had said. Feeling purposeful, so feeling like we matter, and that when we get up in the morning, we have something that we're motivated about. If we don't have that, then we fall into that trap that so many retirees do, where they're watching endless hours of TV. Studies show that average retiree watches 47 hours of TV.
Wow.
So quickly replace a full-time job with a full-time job of watching TV. And that is so detrimental for so many reasons,
Yeah.
right? I don't even tell you, from a cognitive standpoint, a health standpoint, a connection standpoint. So that we can see where that can just be this slow burn where people get into that kind of habit. So that's an important area, is feeling purposeful. Also, just the transition in and of itself, being able to move from career into this next chapter. From an external standpoint, our roles have changed, but internally we are changing as well. And so we want to really focus on, what does that internal change, that transition, mean for us? And there's a lot of work that's been done. William Bridges, Bruce Byler are two of them that really give us a framework for this, and that we start with the ending. So often people jump right into the new beginning and getting busy, filling up their calendar, doing the to-do list, the bucket list. We hear of people traveling right away, and there's nothing the matter with it. But at some point in time, we then stop and think, oh, wow, I just jumped right into this. Now do I have misgivings, or now does it feel like same old, same old? So instead, we want to really focus on starting with the ending. And that's why rituals like retirement parties or send-offs or capturing things in a journal are so helpful to have kind of that period or exclamation mark to that chapter. And then we go through Filer and Bridges talk to us about this messy middle or this neutral zone where we're having some of these difficult emotions. Again, that doesn't fit into the expectation people have about retirement. You're so lucky. You're retired.
Yeah.
Why would you have any
Yeah.
problems? That people do, they can feel confused or overwhelmed or anxious or stuck or any number of things, along with anticipatory excitement, all of those things as well. So we really need to key into what's going on underneath the surface, not just the tip of the iceberg with the changes, but underneath what's happening for us. And so many people that are of retirement age, we push away those emotions. We were raised with no pain, no gain. And that if you start to feel off, well, you push it inside or push it under because that's not efficient or it's not you forward and it's a waste. But we've learned with positive psychology, we need to look at those emotions. They're signals for us. They're telling us something needs our attention.
Yeah.
Either good or
Yeah.
bad. So that's an area that we explore too is, what are those emotions that are coming up for you as you're making this transition before we embark on it? So I touched upon sense of identity, feelings of purpose, navigating that transition in a powerful way. Also looking at the strengths and capabilities that we have. I mentioned it's not a new book, it's a new chapter. What are you bringing with you? Because that oftentimes gives us clues as to how we want to spend our time and the things that we want to do. So some of my clients have been seeing that, moving into a board position would resonate with them, or mentoring young professionals would resonate, or developing a workbook around the kind of work that they did that they could promote to colleges or becoming a professor at a college, any number of things. And it doesn't have to be of that magnitude. And it can be around health, and getting involved with triathlons or getting involved with Ironman or any number of things around health. But the key is rolling back and saying, now, what feels good to you? What satisfies you and feels you, instead of just following the script again that others or society have told us. So I hit upon a number of things. There are others that I work with clients on to capturing that balance again, making sure that they're not overlooking important aspects in their life. Having that runway to retirement so that we're not that short timer that oftentimes we hear about when people say they're going to retire and then they're just kind of folding it in. That's not a strong springboard to your next chapter. And that's not the legacy oftentimes that people want. So I touch upon it, a number of really exciting explorations. It's a unique time in life, but it does need our time and attention to make the most of it and feel connected, to feel like we still matter.
Yeah. Do you ever work with anybody who they go into retirement and they find this sense of identity and they start doing maybe a passion project, or they dive into being a board member or something, and then they come to you, or they just are like, wow, I wish I would have done this sooner, or wow, I wish I would have been doing this my whole entire life?
Yeah. I don't get the whole entire life, although that's, but I mean, that makes very, very good sense. But definitely people who have come to me and said, wow, I wish that I had explored this earlier before I got so committed to doing things. Because I've had some that said, full time they take care of grandkids and then they start to feel resentful or they feel resigned that this is all there is for them. Now, for others, that's very gratifying. So this is a no judgment zone at all. It's a matter, though, of really keying into what matters. And I've had those that, yes, the honeymoon phase was over. They did the travel, they did the bucket list, they did the to-do list, they painted this room and they cleaned out these cupboards and things. And then they say, wow, now what? And so I think then they oftentimes go through this period of loss and this period of wasting time. And, we're not promised anything more than this moment.
Yeah.
We don't know what the future will hold. And so have those kind of regrets is not something that I want for anyone. So the more that we're mindful and aware that wow, retirement beyond the financials, there's things we need to attend to. And that by doing so, we can have that much more fulfillment. Is really,
Yeah, that's awesome. And I wondered that because I've talked to a lot of people who maybe even before retirement or whatever, but they got to that point when they were, they transitioned and they kind of are like, man, I wish I would have done this a lot sooner, or I wish I would have followed um, what I wanted or what I've loved doing. Now, how much does we talked about kind of the change in belief and the identity and the purpose and everything? How much does like fear and mindset play into all this?
yeah. I mean, fear, I think fear comes in because of that unknown. Fear comes in because there isn't a vision. And so to your point, when you're mentioning, people who had misgivings, they didn't do it sooner. Oftentimes people hold back because they fear, well, am I going to fail or succeed at retirement? I've had people say that to me, putting those kind of pressures, those key performance indicators from work into retirement things. And so it can really take people off track. And so, yes, there are all of these challenging emotions that people don't expect because we think that retirement is, again, this freedom and stress free and things, but life still goes on.
Yeah.
And there's still things, that are required of us for things that need attention. And also, we do tend to operate best with some kind of structure framework in our lives. And when it's open ended like that, and everybody's different to the extent that they want that structure. But in any event, we want to feel some sense of predictability. When we don't have that, then fear sets in too, because then it's that unknown. And we start to really feel like we're on quicksand because we don't know what direction we're going. We start to feel like we're going.
Okay. And then, okay, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to mention too that I think that oftentimes when people have these difficult emotions, like you're mentioning fear, that they think that they're the only ones. Like they missed that day when everybody signed up for the great retirement, they missed out, and now they're having the awful retirement, or that the emotions that they're feeling are not normal. I had one client who was despondent about the idea of retiring, and luckily her sister referred her to me and we started digging in and she was in education and she said that she felt like a part of her was dying with the idea of retiring. So of course we investigated, well, why are you retiring? I won't take us through all of that, but I think first and foremost, just saying to her, you're not alone. So many people struggle with the idea of retiring. That took a huge weight off of her shoulders right away because she again thought that she was the only one,
Mhm.
that everybody that was having such a great time and she was really struggling with it. So I think that speaks to the fear, the difficult emotions that you're speaking about. And so being able to dispel that by saying, you're not alone. Let's dig into where those feelings are coming from, what's coming up for you, and then take going from there, but not pushing them aside, pushing them away.
Yeah. And I know that you mentioned like people feeling alone and everything. What about married couples or just couples in general that maybe retire at the same time, or one retires before another, or how does that dynamic kind of change for couples?
Yeah, it changes dramatically. In that, when you think about couples or people that have been partners for a long time, they've not been together 24/7. And not to say in retirement you're together 24/7, but you're definitely together more than likely a lot more than you were. Now, I think the pandemic changed things where people were working from home more, so maybe their time together increased. But in the main, it's still not something that for the majority of your life you've been around that significant other for the same period of time. So what's critically important is that we share our vision. So we need to get clear on our vision of what we would like in retirement, who we want to be or become, and then share it and have a conversation with our significant other. Because if we don't, then there are assumptions that could be made, there are expectations that can be left unfulfilled. And that's where we start to see the rise in divorce, which is on the rise in the demographic that's in retirement age. And oftentimes there's a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is that lack of a shared vision and a lack of communication. So it's important to know too that research shows that men and women in general, everybody doesn't fit into this, step into retirement with different perspectives. Men look at it generally as a time of rest and relaxation, and women as a time of rejuvenation and reimagination.
Yeah.
So we see that already. We're going off in different directions. But by having that communication and then really seeing where do we bring our lives together and where do we have separate interests that then we can bring back our experiences to the relationship. So whatever that path walking down it together looks like, sometimes we'll take different side paths each and then bring it back. But again, it all starts with that communication. I have a really great assessment, really more a conversation starter at couples conversations where they go through and answer quite a number of questions and then have a conversation about their perspective so that they start to really surface, again, some of these expectations that they have or thoughts that they have or recognition that they haven't even thought about some things that maybe their partner has.
Yeah.
So a really great point.
Okay, of course. And like, I got a little ahead of myself, but what got you to the point where you were like, I want to help people work through retirement?
Yes. Well, my background is in corporate sales leadership.
Mhm.
So I always was working with my team members to elevate their capabilities, develop a win-win with clients, and love and exceeding numbers. I took that same sensibility and those passions of mine into my work. I went back to school and became a professional certified coach, and then was working more around business strategies as a business coach. I very quickly started to see that people in my demographic, owners of businesses or people that had been in careers for a while and were getting ready for retirement, they were struggling. They didn't have a clear view of what that looked like. So I started researching things a bit. And I discovered there was this whole world around retirement life coaching. So I went back and got several certifications. But in answer to your question, I started to feel like, wow, this is my demographic. And so many people are struggling. And yet we still have so very much to offer. We're vital. We bring wisdom. We bring capability. We have much more life to live. You know, research tells us that when someone retires, generally there's 20 to 30 more years, we hope, of life left for them. And we don't want just that lifespan. We want that health span and we want that wealth span in what we believe we can bring forward. And so I just felt like, wow, this is really an area that I feel so connected to as opposed to the business coaching, which for me ended up being a little more transactional and more about strategies and things. And so that's why then I made the shift and have been focusing those that are planning for or in.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it's so gratifying because, again, I don't want anyone to feel as though they don't have something to contribute. I've had clients say to me, I feel invisible, or I feel erased, or I don't feel seen anymore, or I share that I'm retired and then the conversation stops. Uh, we don't want that for anyone. Everyone has a contribution to make. Everyone has a life that matters, that they can continue to feel expanding and growing.
Awesome. Now, if I was getting towards retirement in my career
Yes.
and I reached out to you and we started working together, what would that process look like?
I really start with an assessment. So I've got a great assessment tool that kind of lets you see what your perspective is and what your knowledge about retirement is and what's important to you. So that gives you just a bird's eye view and me a little bit of insights, but it's a great springboard. We also together just determine, you know, how deep you want to go because some people really want more of that roadmap and they want to just move forward with it. Others want to dig deeper because they're feeling like their perspective around retirement or that client that was feeling such huge loss and that there are more limiting beliefs or more that they really want to explore. So usually my sessions are anywhere from 6 sessions to 12, but then I have some clients that I split monthly or quarterly just to stay on track and stay accountable. So it's really variable, and that's what I focus on, the one-on-one or couples. And so it really is customized to the individuals. I bring different areas of important, we speak about different foundational building blocks around this and connection now, and bring your strengths, that legacy. So that's what it would look like, is really honing in on where are you at, Greg? What does retirement look like for you? When are you, what's thing you're looking at? Because generally 1 to 3 years before we retire is kind of that sweet spot. And for those that are business owners, probably a couple additional years if they're wanting to then hand off the baton and slow transition out of the work, which is always ideal rather than flash cut one day. And then, as I said, I do work with people who have already retired as well, and really try to assess where are you at, what's not clicking, what more do you want for yourself.
Yeah. Now, yeah, rewind a little bit to current me, right? And what advice would you give people, that are nowhere near the appropriate age of retirement, quote unquote, but they want to be prepared? Like, what kind of things would you tell the younger generations, or maybe even like the 40s and 50s that are like, oh, I haven't even thought about retirement yet?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I do, as I shared, I think the word retired needs to be retired. And so I think that as you go along, like your generation, I don't even know that it's going to really be in the vocabulary. We just don't have a better word
I hope
for it
not.
right now. So yeah, I hope not as well. I agree. There are so many people of retirement age now. So the work that I do is very viable and very vital for so many. But I'm hoping that in your generation, that it won't be, because it will just be looking at things differently. And that will be weaving in all of this, the positive psychology that you all were raised with, that our demographic was not. The positive psychology and seeing the importance around emotions didn't come up until, in the 90s with Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology. So many of us in that retirement demographic don't look at our feelings about things. You all do. You were raised with that. You were raised that emotions aren't just signals, they're not good or bad. But for those that are closer to retirement age, the Gen X and baby boomers, this isn't something that we were raised with. And so that's where it becomes important to say, what are we bringing with us into retirement? We're choosing then to leave, or hopefully, and for some, they're severed from their jobs or displaced. So, but yet their mindset still, it's important. What is your perspective about aging? So I would say for younger generations, that perspective around aging, that's the critical piece. There's been work that's been done by Becca Levy that shows that those that have a positive outlook around aging add 7.5 years to their lives.
Wow.
I bring that statistic because it really, if we start to buy into that, oh, I'm getting older, oh, I can't do this any longer, or I'm too old to learn this at any age, then we can start to really, our mind starts to then inform our body, and we start to shut down or slow down. And so I would really say, have that pro-aging mindset instead of that anti-aging, trying to turn the clock, because it's what's happening for us. So let's embrace it. And I would say too that really then looking to those in older generations to see how they're navigating retirement and learn from those that you would want to emulate, as opposed to thinking, oh, now that somebody's retired, then they're kind of having to phone it in, or they're stepping back, or they're no longer viable. And then I think also I just want to share, I call it a runway to retirement right now. So I would want to offer that concept up to at any age or life stages. How can you pepper in just little bits each day of connecting with people outside of work, of developing interests. So many people come to me and say, I don't really even have any hobbies because I didn't have time. I didn't nurture those relationships because I didn't have time. Um, but by doing that, then we keep this beginner's mindset. We keep this growth mindset. We stay active. So really trying to incorporate some of that and recognize that we can control a little bit of the balance in our lives. Our doesn't have to consume us. Again, I think that your generations are better about that with the balance,
Yeah.
but I think it can still be depending on, how achievement oriented can sometimes be, or how that, feeling like we have to push ahead can then leave other things at the wayside.
Yeah.
So those are the things I would recommend.
Okay. And my next question is that, I have family members. My parents are getting there. They've started having the conversation of, oh, how much longer are you going to work, and how much longer are you going to work? And one of my uncles just announced, like at a family party, like a few weeks ago, that he was retiring that week. Um,
Mm.
but how do you help? How do you assist people in retiring? Because one of the biggest things I've noticed is people retire and then they think about all the things they wanted to do, but they spent so much time working, and they spent so much time raising a family, or they spent so much time not doing the things they love doing. How do you assist people retire without regrets?
Yes. Well, I do have that no regrets retirement book
Uh-huh.
that I'd like to offer everyone. And that what that does is it allows people to start to see what are those days and weeks and months and years going to look like. They start to envision it. I mentioned earlier that having that vision. So capturing that, writing that down, and then looking at, okay, what are the priorities? If that time abundance wasn't there, had a shorter time horizon in front of me, what would bubble up at the things that are most important? And if I had no time left, um, what would I regret? Because we have a chance, even if somebody's retiring, see that they're 65, they start to feel regrets. Well, when you're 75, then what regrets are you going to have?
Yeah.
What regrets? So rather than looking back, we can look back at what we're regretting and learn from it, and then move ourselves forward. Daniel Pink wrote about the power of regrets, and that really being able to pinpoint that they really are learning opportunities for us. So if we look back and say, gosh, I wish that I had played some kind of sport back when. Okay, what is it about playing a sport that brings you? Well, I like the competitiveness. I like the activity. I like the connection. All right. And what could that look like? Not with that sport that you're feeling it's too late to go ski, say, but what might you then build into your life at this point in your time? Using that blameless discernment that this is where you stand now. But if we just regret, then we're left with really nothing. But if we can use it as a springboard into what's possible, then we can open up a whole world of opportunities for ourselves.
Right. And that workbook that you're offering, that they walk through the whole steps to, live life without regrets and all that.
It's definitely a starting point. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for
Okay.
sure. Because oftentimes we are just on autopilot or phoning things in. And so by taking some time to really think about things, and not just think about it, but write it down. So it's not just ideas that are swirling around, but we get them in something that we can look and reflect on. Then we can start to get a lot more concrete about what that vision looks like and where we could make some changes. So yes, it's an excellent jumping off.
Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of like tools and resources for people to use, because uh, writing it down, having a journal or having a planner, like it just makes life so much less confusing.
Yes, it helps clear out the clutter, doesn't it? But it
Exactly.
is a habit that you have to build, because I'll be honest, that for me, journaling has been an elusive thing. Excuse me. For quite a while. I kind of bought a bunch of journals. I do it sometimes. Now I've found a journal that really works for me, and I've been using it for quite some time. But I think when we bring up that word journal, just like bring up the word meditation or bring up any number of different things for some people, or finding purpose, it can really be a showstopper. And so we don't want that. This little workbook is really just a chance to just capture some of your thoughts. If you are somebody that likes to continue to write things down, yes, Greg and I highly recommend it, because it does allow you to clear the clutter out and get it out of your head and onto paper. And then you can look at it and say, okay, does this get crumpled up and thrown away, or does it get incorporated in my life, or does it lead me to needing to explore something else? So I think it's very, very helpful. But if it doesn't fit into somebody's life the way, that it just doesn't work for them, that doesn't mean all bets are off.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. There's always another way.
Yeah. Because you're the CEO of you.
Correct. Now, one final question for you, Wendy, and this has been amazing. We talked a little bit about it beforehand, but the shift in yes, the word retirement or retired needs to be retired, but the shift in mindset, like retirement when I was younger, I explained, has always kind of been something that's like, oh my gosh, like I got to work super, super hard because retirement's coming and, I won't be able to work anymore, this and that. But the shift in, helping people, and even like, I'm not even 30 yet, but even just this conversation has changed how I view retirement and how I'm thinking about the end in mind and thinking about the vision of what's going to be the next step, what's going to be that next transition. It's been really, 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 really big. So,
Fantastic. I appreciate it.
of course. Now, my one final question is, and this is the kind of the theme of the show, is what is something, and it could be about retirement, it could be about business, it could be about anything. What is something that you wish somebody would have taught you, or you wish you would have read in a book, or you wish you would have learned and taken like completely to heart earlier in life?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I've been reflecting on it after listening to some of your shows and having you pose the questions. Great. I touched upon this idea that in our demographic, that my demographic, that we weren't raised with positive psychology, and that emotions were something to push aside or push down. So for me, I wish that when I was younger, that I'd been told that it's okay, that emotions are neither good nor bad. They're just signals that something needs your attention, because I was raised to really push them aside. And I lost present around something. I think that I really recognize or value that by having those emotions, that's a beautiful part of it. That's a real strength, a real capability I have. Connected. So that's what I wish that I had. However, the power of regrets is that this is the path that I'm on now.
Yeah.
And so I've really been able to dig in and that script, and also my children and those that I touch, I'm able, I think, to also infuse that belief that emotions are important, and they're not to be pushed aside, and value yourself for those feelings that you're having.
That's amazing. That's a really good answer.
Thanks.
Now, do you have any last comments or anything you wanted to tell the audience?
Oh, yeah, well, I appreciate that. Well, as Greg mentioned, the name of my company is Conflux Retirement Coaching. That's CONFLUX, and reachable at confluxretirementcoaching.com. I do have this workbook, the No Regrets Retirement, that I'd love to offer people, and I think you'll put in the show notes. They can ask for it at www.boldnewsteps.com. And love to connect on LinkedIn and Facebook, and just appreciate getting to hear from people and being
Of course. And like Wendy said, I'm going to put all of that in the show notes. So everybody listening, if you want to get in touch with Wendy, or if you want to get the workbook, or if you just want to check out the website, I'm going to put everything in the show notes so you can get in touch with Wendy and see everything she's got going on. Wendy, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for your insight, right? It's not very often to get to talk to somebody about retirement. Usually most people are talking about business or sales or something completely opposite of retirement. So this has been really, really, really good.
Well, and thanks for all your great questions and your comments as well. It was super fun. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, everybody listening, remember to keep smiling, keep striving, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you too.